I want to say thank you and I welcome you. Thank you for being here. Very briefly, I would like to recognize one of the founders of our club, Mr. Kurt Sniffen. Can you please stand? Ms. Corellis Navas, our secretary. Thank you for being here. We have Maria, one of our board members. Can you please stand? And last but not least, one of the other founders of our club, Mr. Santiago Avila. He's going to be our next mayor of Deltona. And now that you are awake, and I know that you're awake now, here we have our next guest speaker with the
I'm Senator Dennis Baxley, the neighborhood right next door, Senate District 12. Are you tired of winning yet? Yeah. You want to win this for Desantis? Yeah. I did too. Isn't that why we came? Yeah. We're not finished. We got 8 days. And we're going to get it done. Now let's take just a moment for something precious. We all love Dorothy Ugle. I walked precinct with her the very first time she ran for the Florida House. We miss her so much today. Let's just have a moment of silence. Tom Wright, would you stand? He's going to be running in her place. Would you just stand in honor of her and let me just lead us in this moment, and I'll close with a brief amen. Okay, let's bow our heads and thank God for Dorothy. Amen. And Dorothy, we're going to make sure Tom wins on your name, your good name. Give Tom a hand. Now, please welcome County Commissioner Fred Lowry to lead our prayer, which will be followed by the pledge and the national anthem. Fred Lowry, Commissioner, go for it.
I'm right here. Hey. Let's all stand. Let's stand. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you so much for this day. We are just honored to be here in your presence, and we need you. You put up rulers and take down rulers. We are glad that you have put a ruler named Donald Trump in the White House. We need him. But we need guys like Ron Desantis to help him. And so I just pray, Lord, that you'll give Ron Desantis the victory in all this. Protect his family, watch over him, keep him safe, and may everything we do today be just totally awesome. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. At this time, I'd like to take a moment to do the Pledge of Allegiance. If we can all face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. I'd like to introduce at this time Adonai Crespo with the Youth Performing Arts to sing the Star Spangled Banner.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that save o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Still a great country. Please welcome Representative Bob Martinez. Cortez. Bob Cortez.
Good afternoon, Deltona. How you guys doing today? All right. Well, who am I? I am Bob Cortez. I am your state representative for nearby House District 30, which is the Seminole County, Orange County line. And I'm honored to be here today as the Puerto Rican Outreach Chair for Ron DeSantis' campaign. That's right. I've been honored to be serving in the Florida House since 2014. And see, as conservatives, we've been working with Governor Scott, in pushing the conservative agenda moving forward that has brought 1.6 million new jobs to Florida. Right? That has brought record education funding in Florida. All these policies need to continue moving forward, and we are going to make sure they move forward. That's why we need somebody like Ron DeSantis. And as myself and many other members of Florida House, we are up for re-election. We are doing something special this time around. We are actually helping and telling folks, like you should be doing, why they should be voting for Ron DeSantis and why they should not be voting for somebody like Gillum. Right? You know, we've seen all the news that's been going on with Gillum and the things that they said. He took some stuff from FBI informant and all this other stuff. And it reminds me of a quote that my grandmother used to tell me. And I'll say it in Spanish and I'll repeat it in English. Palo que nace doblado, jamás su tronco endereza, right? What does that mean for those in Anglo? It says that a crooked tree cannot be straightened out. I tell you that we only have less than 8 days to go. We need all hands on deck for your local candidates, your statewide candidates, and most importantly, Rick Scott as Senator and Ron DeSantis as our next governor of the state of Florida. Team effort, folks. Team effort, because I have, and I'm going to introduce you next, my good friend and colleague from the Florida House, from Brevard County, Representative Randy Fine.
How y'all doing today? It's an exciting day. We're just 8 days away. I am Randy Fine. I represent Brevard County, and I drove over here because I am the state outreach chair for Jews for the DeSantis campaign. Now, I am the only Jewish Republican in the legislature, so they did not have a lot of choices. But nonetheless, I want to talk about why those issues are so important. As many of you know, 2 days ago was a very, very sad day in my community. Never in the history of the United States has the Jewish community been attacked as it was 2 days ago. People who survived the Holocaust more than 50 years ago, who made it through that unspeakable horror, died at the hands of a crazed gunman. And it's something that we all have to think about and take very seriously. Unfortunately, anti-Semitism seems to be the only form of racism and discrimination that is mainstreamed by so many in our society. And while I wish I could tell you it was only on one side, that is not true. Neither party has a monopoly on this issue. But when we look about who needs to be our next governor, we need to ask who stands with the Jewish community and those who care about Israel and those who care about the Jewish community. And on that question, the answer is very simple. It is Ron DeSantis. Whereas Congressman DeSantis helped figure out where the embassy would go in Jerusalem and was there the day it opened, Mayor Gillum opposes to this day the idea of Jerusalem being the eternal, undivided capital of the state of Israel. And I know 2 years ago, I got the first ever in the country security funding for Jewish day schools. So the Jewish boys and Jewish girls would be safe if they went to Jewish schools. Today, that seems like a pretty good idea. But while I was fighting for that money, Andrew Gillum was welcoming the exact groups who were lobbying against it to Tallahassee. So I will tell you this, when I introduce that legislation again next year, I know that a Governor DeSantis will not only support it, but he's going to come to me and he's going to say, why aren't you doing more? Yeah. We need Congressman DeSantis goes and votes, we will win. Yeah. To introduce Senator David Simmons, who's from right here in this area. Come on out, Senator Simmons.
How we feeling? I tell you what, for a guy like me who grew up on a farm in Tennessee, had two parents who were public school teachers, and had to work on the farm many times when I didn't want to. But the fact of it is it's a character builder, and it's the kind of way that we believe in here in America.
Yes.
Hard work gets you where you need to go. Ron DeSantis believes in hard work to get us where we need to be. You know, you've heard talking about, pithy quotes, and I got a quote, and that's comes from a Spanish proverb, and that Spanish proverb is, "Dime con quién andas, y diré quién eres."
Así es.
And for those of us who need a translation, tell me with whom you walk, and I'll tell you who you are.
That's right.
And if you're walking with FBI agents who are investigating you, guess what? We know who you are. I'll tell you something else. Winston Churchill said, since we're talking about quotes, because Mayor Gillum believes so much in being a socialist Democrat,
Yeah.
there are only two places where socialism will work. In heaven, where it's not needed, and in hell, where they got plenty of it. The fact of it is, Republicans are inclusive. We had our foundation on the beliefs of Abraham Lincoln, and that is equal opportunity for all. Congressman DeSantis is a believer in equal opportunity for all. Not equal results, because that depends upon how hard you work, but everyone treated equally under the eyes of the law. So I ask you to, these last 8 days, to make us a better state. As Abraham Lincoln said, "My dream is of a place and a time where America will once again be seen as the last best hope of earth." That's what we need. We need Republicans to lead us to the way that Ronald Reagan, that Abraham Lincoln, and all the great leaders who are Republicans have led us in the past. And speaking of leadership, Volusia County has a great leader in its law enforcement, Michael Chitwood. There he is. Elected in 2016 and has been a great and continues to be a great sheriff. Law enforcement supports Ron DeSantis, and Michael Chitwood is here to speak on behalf of those we believe are important, namely Ron DeSantis. Thank you.
It is a great honor for me as a second-generation cop and having over 30 years in law enforcement to introduce the next governor of the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis. Think back, didn't we have a president named Bush who was captain of the Yale baseball team? He's also a graduate of Harvard Law School with honors. He was a JAG officer in the United States Navy in 2007. That's right, United States Navy. As a JAG officer in 2007, as part of the troop surge, he was deployed to Iraq. And at the end of his service, he was awarded a Bronze Star for meritorious service. He's also been a federal and a military prosecutor, where he's prosecuted cases for corruption, for child exploitation, and for child abuse. Child exploitation is huge with us in the sheriff's office. We have a whole unit that is assigned to that. In Congress, he was known as a reformer. Term limits and pension reform. I think everybody in this room knows that he was entitled to his pension as a congressman, and yet he turned around and said, no, I don't want that. To me, it symbolizes something that John McCain talked about, character. Character isn't about what you do when people are looking, it's about what you do when people aren't looking. And Ron DeSantis is a man of character. He served as the chairman for the National Security Council. He is a huge fighter for reform for our VA. He's about fiscal responsibility in government and accountability. How about that? On a personal note, several years ago when I was the police chief in Daytona Beach, and law enforcement was being much maligned for everything that was wrong in the country. Do you remember those times? Where my officers couldn't walk into a restaurant without worrying about if somebody was going to spit on their food or if you were going to be assassinated sitting in a patrol car. Well, Congressman DeSantis contacted me and said, I would like to hold a roundtable with your officers. No offense, Chief. I don't want to talk to anybody with stars and bars on their collars. I want to talk to the men and women that are out there pushing that patrol car around 12 hours a day. Okay, Congressman, you got it. He showed up by himself. No media, no reporters, no staff. And for 2 hours, he listened to the complaints, to the suggestions, and the ideas of those officers. And being a cop for 31 years, I can count on one hand, using 2 fingers, the time that somebody came down and wanted to hear what the boots on the ground had to say. To me, that was what leadership was all about. That's what character was about. And that's what this election.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sheriff, for a great introduction. Thanks to my friends over here for being here. And thank you guys for coming out to show your support. What a crowd. I'm excited. I'm excited that in this race, I'm the only candidate who has worn the uniform and served in our armed forces. I'm happy to say that I'm the only candidate of the 2 of us running who is not going to raise your taxes. And I'm also glad to say that of the 2 of us running, I'm the only one that can credibly say I'm not under investigation for corruption. So my mission here today and for the rest of the campaign and into the governorship is simple. We need to protect Florida's future for us and the next generation. And we need to start by protecting Florida's economic momentum. Governor Scott deserves a lot of credit for what he did to attract jobs to Florida, to grow jobs for Florida. I don't know that the economy has ever been stronger in Florida's history, but here's the thing. I don't think we've even come close to reaching our potential. We have a historic opportunity, given the fact that we have a good economic climate, given the fact that we are a low-tax state, to capitalize off that, particularly as people look in higher tax states with what happened with the federal tax bill. They can't deduct the tax increases anymore, the state income taxes. So that's made Florida as attractive as ever. And I think we could have record investment in our state in manufacturing and technology and finance. That's growing a broader economic base with higher paying jobs and more opportunity for the people of Florida. That's there for the taking, but you got to have good policy and you got to have good leadership. And that's exactly what I'll bring as the governor. We also need to protect and expand education opportunities for folks here in the state of Florida. And one of the best ways we can do that, I believe, is to have a renewed focus on vocational education, technical training. our high schools. You can partner with local industry. We need to incentivize things like industry certifications, because here, look, I worked very hard to go to college and get advanced degree, and that's good for a lot of people, and I want that pathway to be there. But I remember being told that unless you go to a traditional college, you can't be successful. And that's not true.
That's right.
A four-year brick and ivy education is one way you can be successful, but it's not the only way, and indeed for many people it's not the best way. And so I want to make sure those opportunities are available,
Yes.
because if you do that and you acquire those skills, you don't have to go deep into debt, and you can be very productive and make good money. And there's honor in doing that, and people shouldn't be frowned upon for doing it. You shouldn't act like somehow you're not as good because you didn't do the traditional 4 year. First of all, why would anyone want to go $100,000 in debt just to get a degree in zombie studies? I mean, so we'll make sure we do that, and that'll be more opportunity for folks, but it'll also mean, as we're building a stronger economy here in Florida, the fact that we're focusing on things like that as a state, that's going to cause more businesses to want to come here because they know they're going to have a good workforce to be able to hire folks. And so it's a win-win situation, and we'll work very, very hard to make sure that that's a priority in all of Florida's schools. I also think that I'm also on a mission to protect Florida's environment, because here that's the lifeblood of everything that works in our state, and particularly when you talk about water and making sure we have clean water. You know, it affects different parts of the state differently. Some of the places like Southwest Florida had a really rough summer because of some of the toxic algae, some of the red tide, some of the mixture of the two. And so we need to make sure that we have Florida's plumbing under control, that we have water that's clean and available, because it is an environmental issue, of course, but it's also an economic issue. It affects every aspect of our economy, from locally to statewide. And if you don't have a solid environment and you start losing out on tourism, you start losing out on businesses, that's one of the reasons why we have no state income taxes. We have a lot of people that visit our state and contribute through the sales tax and other ways. So it is an economic issue as well. I will be able to get this done because I have the ability to work productively with the Trump administration to make sure that projects are where we need them, and to make sure that we have good folks in our state agencies and on these state boards. And so we will get that done. I don't know how you work with the federal government if you're running for governor on a platform of impeaching Trump, but yeah, some people do, some people don't. That's just the way it is. So we'll make sure that we protect Florida's environment for the next generation. And then we also have to protect Florida's communities and really stress safe communities. And here's the thing, we've had a decline in crime throughout most parts of Florida. Not in Tallahassee, but in most parts of Florida. But that does not happen by accident. I think the sheriff will tell you, you don't have safe communities by accident. It requires people who are willing to put on the uniform, protect and serve, and that means, you know, you may be called upon to put your life at risk in order to save members of the community. It requires elected officials who will stand by the men and women in law enforcement and not only support them, but support their mission and provide them with the resources they need to be able to get that done. It also means that you have, as a state, have to be willing to cooperate with the federal government. For example, if we have a criminal illegal alien here that is serving a sentence, when they come out, they must be transferred to ICE so they can be taken out of our country. The next governor will be able to have a golden opportunity to appoint 3 justices to the state Supreme Court. It's a big deal. Now, we've had an activist liberal court for a generation. We have 4 members of that court who I would describe as liberal activists, 3 who are solid constitutionalists. The 3 vacancies that are occurring all are liberal activist judges' vacancies. They're retiring. So I will appoint judges who understand the proper role of the court is to apply the law and Constitution as it's actually written, not to rewrite the law, not to rewrite the Constitution, not to legislate from the bench. And to impose their personal philosophies on the rest of the state. These will be judges who are grounded in the Constitution and the rule of law, judges like Justice Clarence Thomas on the U.S. Supreme Court. That is the type of people we will appoint. And when we do that, and when we do that successfully with those 3 selections, we will have ended judicial activism in Florida for a generation. Now, we are running a race against a guy who he's really upset because I referred to him by his first name in the debate. Oh, show respect. Don't call me Andrew. All right, whatever. You can call me Ron. I don't care. But, if we're going to play that game, I mean, you got to be honest with what you're doing. So if he wants a proper title, I mean, I could do it, but I got to be honest about how I'm doing it. So if he wants a proper title, I mean, I can do Crooked Mayor Gillum. I mean, think about it. He's in this debate a week ago, and I asked, because he's been under investigation, he's had all these questions. It doesn't really get asked by the press very often at all. I mean, imagine if I were under investigation, they'd have reporters camped out by the federal grand jury. I mean, it would be nonstop. So I really had to just hold him accountable. And basically, he got upset. He said, I'm a grown man. I've paid for everything in my life. I've never taken anything for free, and all this other stuff. And it turns out, like 2 days later, documents come out. He was on a junket to New York with a guy who was posing as a contractor looking to do business with the city, but was actually an undercover FBI agent who greased Andrew's palms with a ticket worth $1,000. Now that's an illegal gift, we know that. Then the same lobbyist who arranged that trip gave Andrew a free stay in Costa Rica worth about $1,000 at this luxury villa for 4 nights. So that's another $1,000. And here's the thing. He then turned around and gave those same lobbyists a contract with the city for $2 million to build a restaurant. So that's just the typical corrupt municipal politics that I think people are sick of. Now, what Crooked Mayor Gillum will say is, oh, I'm not under investigation. That's just not true. But let me ask you this. Can somebody give me one reason why an undercover agent would be greasing his palms if they weren't investigating him? Come on. Now, he's tried to use every excuse in the book and tried to do misdirection, but here's the thing. With respect to his conduct and his leadership, it's not about black versus white.
That's right.
It's about right versus wrong. Contrast about how you're going to view serving in office, and some of the speakers had mentioned, I was somebody who, I had a very good resume. I could have made a lot of money. I decided to raise my hand and serve in the armed forces, raise my hand and serve in Iraq and volunteer, serve as a prosecutor, helping defend victims in our community. When I got to Congress, the first thing I did was decline the pension benefits for members of Congress. They should not be getting these pensions. They're a waste of tax dollars. I declined the Obamacare subsidies, which are not legal. I helped stop a pay increase for members of Congress and rolled that back. And then I supported term limits and was the leader supporting of term limits. And I introduced the proposed 28th Amendment, which said Congress shall make no law respecting the citizens of the United States that does not also apply to the Congress itself. And so every step of the way, I viewed service, whether in uniform, you're serving your country first. As a prosecutor, you're serving the community and serving victims. As an elected official, I was putting taxpayers first. Andrew has used a political office to feather his own nest and put himself first. And that's a big difference. We don't need that type of failed leadership as governor. That's just the bottom line. Now, if that doesn't work for a name, I could also say failed Mayor Gillum, because if you look in Tallahassee, he has failed to keep his community safe. Tallahassee is one of the most crime-ridden cities in Florida year after year. Last year, Tallahassee had the highest number of murders in the history of the city. In fact, one of the guys running to succeed him as mayor was Andrew's former chief of staff. And this candidate is sending out literature to people in Tallahassee saying, last year we had most murders in history, highest crime rate in Florida. Something needs to change. We need leadership now. Yeah, you do, because your current mayor hasn't provided the leadership. And now he, in the debate, he thought, oh, he was joking about this as if it was funny. I can tell you, when crime can shatter the lives of victims, it can shatter the lives of family. It's not funny. His failure isn't funny. He's let down the people of Tallahassee. But here's the thing. I wish I could say it was just because, he wasn't quite competent enough to get the job done. I mean, I think that may be part of it. But a lot of it is his hostility to law enforcement and how he views the role. He can't keep the community safe. He signed a pledge. First of all, I've been endorsed by the overwhelming majority of sheriffs, the Police Benevolent Association, Highway Patrol, just another police union. I didn't even know some of these groups existed, and they're all endorsing me. Now, part of that is because I have a strong record of standing with the men and women in law enforcement, as Sheriff Chitwood said. And I'll continue to do that as governor. But look, part of the reason is because Andrew has signed a pledge with a radical group called the Dream Defenders, which says that the police and prisons, he signed his name to this, police and prisons, they say, have no place in justice. They say that law enforcement should be defunded and the money should be diverted to welfare programs. That is unacceptable. So he doesn't support our men and women in uniform. He doesn't support the mission. And if he's signing a pledge saying he's going to cut police budgets, how the heck is that going to keep our communities safe? It's not. But then you add to that the fact that this is a guy that wants to abolish ICE. He wants open borders. He wants Florida to be a sanctuary state. And just yesterday, his running mate saying that they welcome the caravan to just come right across our border. Right across the border with no, so, you either have a country or you don't. You either have sovereign borders or you don't. And it's interesting, this caravan, Mexico offered them a place, and they turned Mexico down. Because it's not about finding a safe haven, it's about proving that people can overrun our border with impunity. And we can't let that happen. I don't want people overrunning our border illegally. And so, Gillum King, they support allowing that to happen. I don't think that's right. I think that's a wet kiss to the drug cartels when you can just come across the border and move product. So we should not let that happen. But certainly, as governor, I can tell you, we will not be a sanctuary state here in Florida. And we will not have any sanctuary cities as governor. Of failure, but it's a record that he would really, throughout the whole rest of the state, would be very damaging for our communities, and so we can't let that happen. Now, he could also call him Radical Mayor Gillum, because this Dream Defenders group, he will not disavow them. I mean, he called them from the debate stage during the Democratic primary, saying he stands with them, he stands by them, he wants to give a shout out to them. Well, and then he signed the pledge saying he'd support their Freedom Papers agenda. If you guys want to educate yourself, Google Dream Defenders Freedom Papers and just read it. And they talk about different things. They attack the police, as I mentioned, but they also do things like attack our military. In fact, the manifesto that he endorsed says that the United States is the biggest bully in the history of the planet. That's what it says in there. And it also said the military standing up for our country. The boys that stormed the beaches of Normandy, they were not bullies. The Marines that hoisted the flag over Iwo Jima, they were not bullies. They were American heroes. And they were helping save the world. So as governor, you've got to stand up for our veterans. And if you